Good afternoon, everyone. If this is your first session today, welcome to reInvent 2024. And if you've been to a couple of sessions, well, welcome to this session. It's one of the series for new to AWS customers. And today we'll be talking about how to measure and improve cloud return on investment. And guess what? Using generative AI. With a show of hands, how many of you here are already in the cloud running production workload? All right. How many of you are exploring the cloud? One? Okay. All right, good.
A few more.
Okay, that's good. Good to know. So when customers use the cloud, there is an expectation when they invest in the cloud that there is a return on investment. And the question becomes this: how do customers really know if they are achieving it? Right? My name is Kunle. I'm part of the solutions architecture team here in AWS. I've been with AWS for about 3 years now, with over 2 decades of industry experience. And with me here, with my colleague, Chenglong and Oren Waldman, what we are targeting today is that we're able to answer that question on how are you measuring and achieving that return on investment in the cloud. Now, a quick rundown of the agenda for today. So it's going to be broken out into 2 sections. The first section, I'm going to be talking about a framework for measurement, where I'm going to talk about which all of you know about already, the why of the cloud. We're going to talk about what we call the cloud value framework. Then afterwards, we'll delve into what we call a balanced scorecard that helps you track your cloud strategy. Then I'll hand over to this gentleman here, and they will walk you through some of the ways you all can leverage Gen AI to optimize your investment. They're going to go to some few common use cases and also some advanced use cases. Why do customers move to the cloud? You all have experienced this, most of you. It could be cost reasons. You want to lower your operating cost, or you want to move away from CapEx operating model to OpEx. Or is it about reliability or security by leveraging some of the inherent properties of cloud infrastructure? Or you want to access broad range of services in the cloud to help you drive that innovation. Reduce your time to market, and of course, expand your customer reach. Now, having spoken to over hundreds of customers on their cloud journey, I always tell customers this: you all need to own your cloud journey. What do I mean by that? I mean that, how do you know if your investment is paying off? How can you measure your return on investment? How do you justify this investment with your board of directors, with your executive team? And also, how can you brag about all the things you've done in the cloud with tangible benefits? We have key performance objectives. These are the goals that you all as a company have to define. What are those goals? Then afterwards, it's going to be, how do I measure these goals, which is the KPI now? Once these are defined, then the question becomes, how do I measure? How do I track the progress? Now, next, we're going to talk about a framework that will help you with these KPIs and KPOs track your investments. And it's called AWS Cloud Value Framework. So we have a team in AWS called the Cloud Economics team. They developed this framework to holistically understand cloud value with these 5 pillars you are seeing on the screen. Cost savings, the productivity of your staff, your employees. How resilient are you operationally? Business agility. And last but not the least, sustainability. Now, let's double click on each of these items to dive deeper into it. Cost savings, usually expressed as total cost of ownership. This could be, your goal here could be, you want to reduce your operational cost, your infrastructure cost. And how do you track this, for example? It could be as simple as, how much am I spending on my disaster recovery site? Or how much am I spending on my database clusters? On the screen, at the lower end of the screen, you can see a benchmark. Recently, I think in 2022, IDC created a report which is basically measuring AWS, talking to AWS customers now. Talking about what are the business value of AWS customers, what are they deriving in terms of metrics. And that's the benchmark you see at the bottom of the screen. So in the rest of this slide, you will be seeing some of those relevant to each pillar. So we've talked about cost now. So now let's talk about productivity of your staff. How efficient is your team? So what do we want to measure here? What are our goals here? It could be output per capita on premises, or currently your database administrator is managing 5 clusters. When you introduce efficiencies, they can go up to 10 clusters. So you can see here that you need to define your objectives and a metric to track it. Now, talking about how resilient you are as a business, operationally. This covers benefits of improving reliability. Today is Cyber Monday, right? Now, think about it. How much downtime can an e-commerce site tolerate today? An hour? 10 minutes? And I ask customers when I talk to them about risk strategy, I ask them, how much downtime can you tolerate? When are you going to get that phone call that nobody wants to get? So a KPO here could be, you want to increase your application availability. And how do you measure this? A KPI could be, how much downtime do you have in a year? Maybe historically it's been 12 unplanned downtime. One of your key goals will probably be, I want to cut that down by 75%, or whatever number your business desires. Now let's talk about agility. So this is all about how quickly your business is able to respond to changes. Whether capitalizing on an opportunity, we all were not really surprised about the Gen AI about 2 years ago, right? How quickly can you all tap into that and get to market quickly? Or how do you respond to your competitors? A KPO here, a business goal here could be, you want to reduce your time to market. Historically, it takes you 6 months. And how do you measure this? Time to market. Your dev team spends 3 months, typically from ideation to rollout. But you're able to cut it down because you've set that goal and you're tracking towards that. And last but not the least is sustainability. This is all about minimizing environmental impact of running your workloads. Do you have sustainability goals in your businesses? Anyone? No? All right. Good. Okay. So this impacts the company itself as well. Lowering costs could be a benefit here because guess what? When you focus on sustainability, you are actually introducing efficiencies, thereby lowering carbon footprint. That could be a good KPI for your business as well. So now we've talked about a few things. 5 pillars. I walked through those 5 value pillars that you can start thinking about as you embark on your cloud journey, or if you're already on the road. How do you better optimize all your investments? Now I'm going to go to a section here, which is basically another dimension to all of this value and ROI. With all of these value areas I've talked about, the question now becomes, how do you do this in a balanced fashion? We all remember, or we still talk about it, balanced diet, right? You want to have a balanced diet when you eat every day. That's a good analogy for this. You want to have your protein, your carbs, your fat, your vitamins, all of those, right? Same thing applies to your cloud strategy. You want to ensure that on the customer side, your customers are getting satisfied. They are happy with you. You can see those metrics under those 4 areas. I give you an example of the customer first, because that's the one that all of us are very familiar with. This that you're seeing on the screen is what we call a balanced scorecard, which is a popular framework that was developed to track cloud strategy. So after customers, that's one of the key perspectives. Now let's go into financial. Are you making money? Are you profitable? Then afterwards, we go into what we call the internal processes. Efficiency and effectiveness of your critical internal operations. Your KPIs and KPOs should also focus on this perspective as well. And lastly, learning and growth. Internal capabilities needed to drive innovation. Do you have the team necessary to help you do this? Now, I gave these 4 examples and these 4 perspectives. Now, let's talk about why they are all very important. Let's say you have a happy customer, happy with you, your CSAT or your NPS score is great. The question now is, if that is true and you are not profitable, guess what happens? There is a problem, right? Probably not stay long in the business. So as you think about customers, you also need to think about the profitability of all the things you're doing. Now, let's assume that financially you are doing well and customers are happy. But you had an incident in your business where your system was down for 24 hours. The impact of that is what? All of those first two perspectives may now be suspect because your customers are now unhappy. Now, let's assume the first 3 are everything is fine. Your internal processes are great, your financials are good, your customers are happy. However, your competitors are drowning you with new features, new innovative ideas, so you cannot keep up. Guess what happens there? You will be left behind as well. So in order for this not to happen, here is what's going to happen. That's why we have this balanced scorecard. You have a balanced view of your cloud strategy that touches these 4 perspectives. Just think about balanced diet when you think about this. So now, what I'm going to do next is, this is a model, right? However, in your businesses, you probably want to represent this in a way that makes sense to you all. This is a matrix, for example, that shows you your KPI, your goals, KPO, and also your cloud value framework, the pillar that applies. So in this case, what's going to happen is that you can actually create all of this to track your progress with your executives. So you have a basis to say, we invested X amount of dollars, this was our goal, this was our KPI, and we've met those KPIs. Kind of something you can brag with as well. All right. So now I've talked about all of these things, the framework, the balanced scorecard. I'm now going to hand over to Chenglong, and it's going to walk you through how all of this information I've shared with you, how can you leverage it using generative AI solutions. Chenglong, over to you.
Thanks, Kunle.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Regardless which industry you are in, chances are in the last couple of years, you have been working on certain project which is related to the generative AI. And you are not alone. According to EY 2024 Workspace Reimagined survey, the adoption rate for the generative AI has been increased from the 23% in 2023 to 70% in 2024. And among different industry, technology has been the highest adoption rate with 90%. But even with government and public sector, they have a 60% adoption rate as well. And what are people using the generative AI for? According to the IDC 2024 Worldwide Global Generative AI Trend Survey, most of people are using the generative AI for workspace employee productivity, followed by the IT, and then revenue generation, as well as the core business internal. So we will dive deeper into each of these use cases to see how generative AI can help you in these spaces, and how can you adapt generative AI with AWS efficiently. And when you do so, how can you measure your return of investment with the cloud value framework that Kunle just introduced. So let's start with corporation employee productivity use cases. As a solutions architect, one of the most common questions that I have been asked by my customer is, we have data sitting everywhere, but we don't know how to use it. And a lot of the time when we need to find information, we have to go through different silos, and in order to hopefully we can get the information out and have the holistic view of everything. Does this look familiar to you guys? You have a database, you might have Salesforce, you have data in certain type of file storage. And when you need some type of the data, you have user like this, and then each of them has their own identity. You want to make sure right people access to the right data. And your objective is you want to have people be able to query, collect all the information, and while retain the permission. And when user queries the data, they can get the information not just from single source, but from everywhere. So considering this, traditionally, if you need to develop something like this, what would you do? You probably would hire a third-party company or have a developer team, start to build application that can connect to different data sources, and then retain the permission and put them in a centralized repo and index them. So when the user query based on the keyword, you might return a page of the relevant result, and the user will start looking to each of the document and find the right answer. Does that sound familiar? We have been doing that for a long time. But this is where the generative AI can really help, right? With Amazon Q Business, that can help you to get this into the production sooner. So let's take a look on what Amazon Q Business can help you. So Amazon Q Business has a built-in connector that can connect to various data sources. And when they connect, they are able to discover all the data and collect all the data. And most importantly, they can analyze those data and understand the data. At the same time, they will retain the permission. So when user query, they will be able to create the databases, knowledge base. So when user query, according to their permission, the answer will curate it to the user's permission, only come from those, the data source the user has permission to connect to. And the user asks a question in a natural language way. So they understand the question, instead of the just keyword-based search, They return that from different documents and give you the best answer from different data sources. So the users still have the chance to look at different data sources to make sure their answer is right for them. But this does save a lot of time, and the accuracy of the answer will greatly improve over the traditional way. And all of this can be done automatically through the Amazon Q business. So when you invest in the Amazon Q business, how can you measure your return of investment using the cost value framework? So let's take a look on the cost saving pillar. The model behind the generative AI normally require a lot of parameter and they take a lot of time and resources to train and inference those data. So it is much easier to use those pre-trained generative AI models in the cloud. So this can save you the infrastructure cost to train and inference those data. But don't get me wrong, we say pre-trained data, they are used those to understand the document and understand the question that user asks, instead of to answer your question using the pre-trained model. The questions still come from your own knowledge base, your own data sources. So they just use the generative AI to understand the data sources and the questions. Then with that, they can answer the question based on your data source to the customer. And at the same time, think about our use cases earlier that you need to hire a third-party company or have an internal team build that application. Now, those can be saved or compared to your invest in generative AI. So let's think about the staff productivity. I think that's actually the most important part. Thinking about this, how soon you can get the answer out of your various data source and then have a holistic view of everything and give that answer to the user in a much faster way. In this case, you will have happier staff, right? They can get things, they don't have to read through all the documents, and they can get the answer quicker. And if they are service your customer, you actually get happier customer. So that creates a positive flying wheel, and by increase the staff productivity. And also, if those information in your knowledge base is used to make your business decision, now you can make the decision faster with generative AI's help. That you can increase your business agility based on the time you can get the answer out of your various data sources. So let's take a look on this quote from Bayer CIO Amanda. At Bayer, they have a system called Decision Science Ecosystem. They use that system to train, build, and deploy their machine learning models. With the help of Amazon Q business, they measure it is able to increase onboarding time by 70%. So here they use onboarding time as one of their metrics to measure their investment. And at the same time, the developers see a 30% productivity gain. So same thing, they use the developers' time to measure their return of investment through this. So let's take a look on the second use case here, IT. Software development cycle management. I think a lot of here looks like you guys are all builders, or maybe you're managing the builders, or you work with builders. So this is very familiar that life cycle for you. You go through the planning phase, creating phase, planning phase that you have a new project, you start to plan your software development, and you need to find the information needed in order to work on this project. And then you go into the create phase, where your developers start to code. And hopefully they will test it, and then make sure it's secured. After this, you can deploy them to the production. And after some usage, you might find some bugs, and you need new features, and you go into the maintenance and modernization phase. And it will go back to planning phase. So this is a very common software development lifecycle. And how generative AI can help here. So let's take a look on the Amazon Q developers features. With the Amazon Q developers, you will be able to, in the planning phase, you can go to AWS console and just ask a question to the Q. And that can help you understand what are the best practice, what is the best architecture you can do for a certain type of the design. and what are the product features with AWS services, and how can you use those services in AWS. So that gives you a good tool to research for during your planning phase. And when you are done with this, you hand it over to the developers. With the integration of the Amazon Q developer to your IDE, the developers will be able to start typing the comments in the IDE using the natural language. And the Q developer can suggest you, how can you code this? Of course, you can change that. And the more you code, the more they can learn. The Q developer can learn from your style. And they can also learn from your history of your project. So with that, the more you do, they can actually customize the recommendation based on your style and your coding project you have done in the past. After that, Amazon Q developer can help you write the unit test case as well. And they can scan your code for vulnerability to make sure your application is secure. And during the maintenance and modernization time, Amazon Q developer has an agent code transformation that can help you move your code from older language model to the newer versions. So let's take a look at the quote from our CEO, Andy Jassy, that in Amazon we have a project that moved Java from the older version to the Java 17. And throughout this project, they are estimated what normally take 50 developer days to do before. Now it just take hours. And overall, they measured the whole project actually have 4,500 developer years of work saved. And not only that, the result is more secured and more efficient application and use less resources. So overall, through the project, we are estimated is providing a 260 million in annualized efficiency gain throughout whole project phases. So let's go back to the cloud value framework. So when you invest something like this, where can you measure this? So let's think about overall. Now you probably need less developer, or the developer can do more. And with that, you might have faster go-to-market time, right? Time is money, and the faster you can go, the more you can gain from, and you compete with your competitor, you have more advantage. Importantly, that you have operation resilience. When you have a more secure and runs more efficiency code, that help you reduce the security incidents. So now you can measure the number of security incidents, and that might result in a very bad reputation for your business. In business agility, how many new features you can have when you invest something like Amazon Q developers? So those are the metrics based on the cloud value framework you can use to measure when you try to measure your invest in the tools such as Amazon Q business. So let's quickly go through another phases. It's core business use cases, internal use cases. A lot of people use BI tools, right? BI tool is very popular that use your past data to be able to see what happened in the past and to project what could happen in the future. And that gives you a very good visualization or information to fine-tune your business model. And in Amazon, we have a service called QuickSight. It has been a very popular business intelligence tool in Amazon. And back to my very first question, where my customers told me that I don't know where to find my data. And those same people, they tell me, now we have data in a dashboard, but we become the bottleneck. They are the ID team, they don't want to be the bottleneck. But what happened is when you have service like QuickSight that can deliver those visualization to your customer, they could be your C-levels. And they become the bottleneck because when they ask something new, they have to do it. They have to wait for that. And you know, the data, actually, the value of data degrades over time, right? So the longer you wait, the less value those data is. So they don't want to be the bottleneck. So with this, Amazon Q in QuickSight can actually help you as well. So this is another way you can use generative AI to help your business. So with Q in QuickSight, you can use AI-powered dashboard authoring experience to help you create a dashboard much quicker. And at the same time, user doesn't have to rely on those IT team to create a dashboard. You can actually interact with QuickSight Q to ask questions in natural language way. And then they can actually use your data to tell you a story about that or create a visualization for you. So now the IT team no longer is the bottleneck. And if you are using those tools to build your application for your services, now you have faster time to market for your application as well. So that increases your agility as well using the Q for QuickSight. In BMW, when they adapt QuickSight Amazon Q-powered authoring experience, they see a huge time saver. And at the same time, I think what's most important is that make critical decision more quickly. And I think that's when people use business BI tools, they want to be able to make decision quicker. And that's Q can really help you to make decision much faster here. So overall, we just went through some of the most common use cases that people use generative AI for, and go through a different way that you can adapt those use cases with Amazon tools. And at the same time, we use the cloud value framework to measure when we invest in those use cases, how can you use the cloud value framework to measure your return of investment in the cloud? So now we will turn to Oren for more of the advanced use cases using the generative AI. Hey, Oren.
Thank you, Cheng-Lun. Hi, everyone. So I want to get a show of hands for how many of you had heard of Amazon Q before today's session. OK, quite a few of you. That's great. So it's a great service, and it can be used for a lot of the use cases that Cheng-Lun talked about. And we have a lot of different services. But what I want to do is I want to make sure that we always work backwards from you, from the customer, and that we're always talking about the use cases that you're using and which tools and services to use in those particular use cases. And so we're going to look at a few or more complicated, more sophisticated use cases and a service that can help you in those situations too, because what's important is obviously for return on investment to talk about that. So you saw this slide earlier from Cheng-Lun, and the bar, the third one there on the slide is one about revenue generating. And this could be perhaps just an idea, a brand new application. Maybe you have an existing application and you're thinking about using generative AI for it. And oftentimes, not always, these are the types of use cases that require some sophisticated solutions, may need some deeper thought and to think about those and to solve them. So we're gonna look at that today. And so in the last 15 minutes or so here, we're gonna talk about how to approach generative AI use cases that are maybe more sophisticated and may require more knobs, more customization, and more choice. And before I do that, though, I want to just take a step back and think about, just in general, about any new projects that you're thinking about embarking on. And one of the most important things, and there are a few up here on the slide, but one of the most important things in terms of generative AI is, do you even need generative AI, right? You're going to hear a lot about Gen AI, and there are a lot of great services out there. But it's really important to think about, is this a project that even needs it? And oftentimes it is. So just think about that first. The second thing is, do you have the right people on your team? And sometimes you may think about or need to hire people. Other times you may think about hiring a third party, a vendor. At Amazon, we have over 100,000 APN partners. Some of them specialize in many different types of things, including Gen AI. So important to think about that before you even start on your project. Third is budget. Do you have the budget for the particular project that you're embarking on? Milestones, deadlines, timelines. All those things are important, and you might consider breaking down your projects into smaller projects before you continue. And of course, data. Gen AI is not magic. It's great, and it does a lot of great things, but you definitely want to think about, do you have the data to support the particular use case that you're thinking about doing? And last, of course, is return on investment, and think about whether the project will actually give you your money back and whether you're going to get the revenue that you think you will out of that project. So think about that carefully and have those internal conversations about impact, the risk, data, budgets, not just the technical ones, but the business ones as well. And if you have all those factors and you think about them carefully, you'll have a successful project, hopefully, at the end of it. So before we start talking about some more specifics, I just want to quickly summarize in terms of the 4 categories that I would look at when you're considering some of these projects. And I would look at these as table stakes, if you will, for these more complicated scenarios. So one is customization, right? It's just important in those use cases to create differentiated experiences for your users, but also for developers, right? In the past, you could work on different use cases, and Amazon Q, for example, is a great service. But if you want to be able to customize more, turn those knobs, that's something to consider. Number 2 is choice. Same as as a customization, choice sort of comes hand in hand with that. You want to be able to have different choices and be able to decide between different parts of those things that you're going to be using for the application. And third, and you're going to hear me talk about this a couple of times, but security and privacy, always important. At AWS, we build that into every service that we have, and it's always top of mind for us and top priority. And last, of course, is return on investment. That's what we're talking about here. Really important to not only think about that return on investment, but also think about it as you scale your application later on. So to continuously do that. And so if we think about maybe a sophisticated use case or a project that you're working on, it oftentimes will start with an application. That might be a brand new application. Maybe there isn't even any code yet and you're just thinking about planning it. Maybe you have users, maybe you don't, but hopefully you have some existing users and you're thinking about how do I get more users, and you're considering generative AI for that particular use case. And when this happens, oftentimes what's going to happen is you're going to want to integrate it with an existing API. And your developers are going to want to do that in the easiest way, but also in a very powerful way, and be able to customize and have that choice. And when they want that choice, they want that choice because they don't want to be stuck. They don't want to have few options. They want more options. And so in the next few slides, we're going to talk about a service and its features that will allow your developers to do exactly those things. And maybe some of you have already heard of Amazon Bedrock. I know many of you have heard of Amazon Q. But Amazon Bedrock is a fully managed service. It offers a choice of high-performing, what's called foundation models through a single API. And maybe, again, many of you have heard of foundation models, but they are key to understanding generative AI. And what they are is large, deep learning neural networks trained on massive data sets. And they perform a variety of tasks, right? So Amazon Bedrock, it helps you work with foundation models both easily and in a very powerful way. And that should be very important to you if you're looking to improve your return on investment. And when we think about generative AI and foundation models at Amazon, we think about democratizing Gen AI. We don't think that there's going to be one foundation model to sort of rule them all. And with Amazon Bedrock, you have a choice. You could pick foundation models from companies like Anthropic, creators of Claude, or AI21 Labs, Cohere, Stability AI, and also we have our own foundation models at Amazon called Titan. So that's choice. We also want to think about model customization. So we talked about customization as being an important category. With Amazon Bedrock, what you could do is you could choose one of those foundation models that we talked about, but you could also customize them. You could take one of those base models and customize them with your organization's specific data. And what's important to understand there is that by being able to do that, the alternative is that you would have to build these foundation models from scratch. And you don't want to do that. That's just going to be very expensive to do. And oftentimes, that's what you want to do. But in this case, this will allow you to do it more easily and faster. The third one here is something called retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. And what this does is it enhances the model responses by incorporating your own private data and allows the foundation models to, or the responses that come back from the foundation models to be more specific to you. So again, we're going to look at a feature of Bedrock that allows you to do RAG in a much easier way, and where you don't have to worry about some of the underlying infrastructure. And again, last, I mentioned this before, but security and privacy and governance. And with Amazon Bedrock, you have full control of the data that you use, and data is encrypted in transit and at rest. And it's obviously, like I said before, security is top of mind for us, and extremely important as part of what you always think about in terms of continuing with your projects. So we're going to just spend a few slides talking about a couple of features of Amazon Bedrock. So we just talked about choice and how you have that ability to choose between foundation models. And with choice comes complexity. What you're going to end up doing is you're going to have to still pick between those foundation models. And even, especially for the sophisticated use cases, you might have multiple use cases or multiple foundation models even within the same application. You might have a feature that may benefit from one foundation model and a different feature that might benefit more from a different one. And so Amazon Bedrock Model Evaluation is a feature of Amazon Bedrock that will allow you to evaluate and compare and select the best foundation model for your use case. And it has both an automatic and a human evaluation component to it. So you could also use your own data sets or curated ones, as well as metrics that you could either customize or some that are predefined. And essentially what you're going to get is you're going to get a report that's data-driven and allows you to find that best foundation model for those specific use cases. And again, without this feature, you would spend a lot of time on figuring out which foundation model best to use, and that'll save you a lot of time, and of course, will help you with your return on investment and eventually your better business outcomes. The second feature I'd like to talk about is Amazon Bedrock Knowledge Bases. So a few slides back, you saw that we talked about RAG and retrieval augmented generation. And again, this allows you to leverage your proprietary information to improve your AI application and those responses from foundation models. So with this feature, you're able to run a fully managed RAG workflow with native support for RAG. And so you don't have to deal with that undifferentiated heavy lifting that you would normally have to. And what this does is it lets you create secure connections from your foundation models to your data sources. And by managing that entire process, Bedrock allows you, or this feature of Bedrock allows you to reduce that technical overhead that your team would have to normally do. So the last feature I want to talk about with Bedrock is called Bedrock Agents. And especially for more sophisticated use cases, this is going to be helpful. What it allows you to do is it allows you to to decompose large tasks into manageable steps and to use something called actions and the knowledge base that we just looked at, and it'll take a systematic approach to problem solving. An agent can either execute a specific action, or it'll search through the knowledge base for relevant information. And that flexibility of Bedrock Agents allows it to handle really a wide range of tasks, from data retrieval to more complex operations. And that power is and not only that, it can interact with multiple systems and data sources in a very seamless way. And that means that it can perform these tasks that traditionally required humans, your developers or any other data science people to do that. But with this will improve your operational efficiency and open up all kinds of new possibilities for your AI applications. And especially in again, more sophisticated or more complicated SaaS and revenue-generating applications. So this is the last slide before we wrap up, and I want to just quickly summarize the overall session, right? So if we take a step back and think about how Kunle started the session, he talked about the Cloud Value Framework, or CVF. And this is a tool that tries to help you, again, think about how to measure your ROI in the cloud. And I would think of it as, you want to measure it or use it to measure and justify your investments. Maybe it's to a colleague, maybe it's to your board, or maybe even to yourself. And you could see the 5 dimensions of the Cloud Value Framework here, and some of the features that fit into each category. And then later on, Shenglun and then myself, we touched on some of the use cases and a few of the generative AI services that we have available at AWS. But when you think about Gen AI in the cloud, just again, make sure that you carefully consider all these. How they could help you optimize things like cost savings, business agility, and operational resilience, as well as sustainability. And as I mentioned earlier, make sure, again, to plan carefully, and if you do that, you can potentially leverage these services and others to get a better return on your investment. So with that, and on behalf of Kunle, Shenglun, and myself, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Please don't forget to fill out the survey. We really do appreciate your feedback and take it extremely seriously. The 3 of us are going to be in the back outside of the room after the session to answer any questions that you may have, and our email addresses are also up on the slides here, so don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. And again, thank you so much, and please enjoy the rest of reInvent. Thank you.
Thank you.